Lately, I've gotten back into swimming. My gym membership comes with access to an Olympic-sized pool. The place is packed on the weekends, so I go early on weekday mornings when it's empty. Just me and the soft, chlorinated water. That's when I see them, floating in the darkness far below. I started swimming again after I drove past my childhood home in Sandalwood, Florida. The house is very different now. Some plastic surgeon owns it and he's turned it into this gaudy McMansion that crowds the property like an oversized cake. When I lived there, it was a one-story craftsman among other modest homes on the tree-lined suburban street of Egret Drive. Back then, in the late 1990s, the house wasn't the main attraction. It was our backyard pool. My father, John Tilley, wanted to raise a swimmer in the family just like him. Dad had almost qualified for the Olympics in the 200-meter freestyle back in college. $20,000, and 6 months later, we had Lake Tilley, the name my father gave our backyard pool. And it was a lake, especially to my 10-year-old self. The pool was one of those big kidney-shaped ones, over 60,000 gallons of sky blue water. It went from 3 feet deep in the shallow end to over 10 feet near the drain. We even had a diving board, a rarity in most suburban pools. At first, I was scared to swim in the deep end. It had a massive, rectangular drain at its bottom, covered in plastic lattice work. The drain's grid only allowed water to pass through, but it was just big enough that if somebody removed the lattice, it could easily fit a child of my size. I often had nightmares of a vortex sucking me to the bottom of the deep end, my body breaking through the drain and entering an endless, pitch-black abyss below, choking on chlorinated water before I woke up in a cold flop sweat. Over the years, though, I grew more comfortable swimming in the deep end. I joined my school's swim team. My father practically demanded it, and as a result, I spent countless hours swimming in my backyard pool, practicing my breaststroke, freestyle, butterfly, and diving off the diving board. I still refused to swim to the bottom of the deep end, but I got close a few times. And more importantly, I stopped having my vortex nightmares, and I met my 2 best friends. Nathan Andrews was a star on the swim team. Slim, tall, muscular. His name was the Knife, because of how he cut through the water when he swam. If anyone was destined for the Olympics at Sandalwood Elementary, it was him. I met Nathan during swim team tryouts. When I belly flopped during a dive, he was the only one to check on me afterward. The rest of the boys just laughed at my bright pink stomach. After that, Nathan and I became as thick as thieves. I often invited him over to my place for pool parties. He was usually the star of the show, doing backflips off our diving board. Each time, Nathan brought his next-door neighbor, Vandana Patel. Everyone just called her V for short. Vandana was the head of our school's student newspaper and an avid swimmer herself. Her parents wouldn't let her join the swim team, but she wrote about it a lot. I still marvel at her articles chronicling the triumphs and tribulations of these Sandalwood Sharks. She would have been the one to write this account. One day, Nathan, V, and I were treading water in the diving well of our school's Olympic-sized pool. We were in the deepest section, a place meant for high diving competitions. "I dare you to touch the bottom," Nathan said. I ducked under the surface with my goggles. It was over 14 feet deep. At that depth, I might as well have been staring at the bottom of the ocean. "No way." "Why not? Can't hold your breath that long," V asked. "No," I said. "It's just, always scared of the drain," Nathan told her. The diving well had a massive rectangular drain, 4 times as big as the one in my backyard pool. Its lattice work was wider too, big enough for a child's hand to fit through its rectangular openings. V laughed. "Oh, the drain won't hurt you," she said. "I don't know." I've heard about kids getting sucked into drains at public pools. They swam too close, down where the suction's really strong. Really? V said. I didn't notice the sarcasm in her voice. Danny said his cousin's friend knew a kid at school who disappeared in a public pool one night. I continued. Danny's cousin's friend, Nathan said. Yeah, sounds like a legit source. By now, I sensed their skepticism, but I kept going anyway. The story was just too creepy not to continue. The public pool became backed up, I said. Something was clogging its drain, so they called in this dive crew to go down to the bottom. They used a big, underwater vacuum thingy to clear the blockage, and you know what they found? What a mass of old band-aids, V asked. A 10-year-old boy, I said. The drain's vortex had stretched his body until it was over 20 feet long. Ew, gross, V said. Nathan chuckled. Oh, that's just an urban legend, dude. I stared at the drain 14 feet below my tiny legs. Most of me believed Nathan. I had spent countless hours in swimming pools, public and private. In that time, I had watched hundreds of kids swim down to the drain, touch it, and resurface unscathed. Even so, there were times when I swam over the deep end when I swore that I saw something move down there, beneath the latticework, a flash of pale white flesh in the darkness. The sightings never lasted more than a second, but they were seared into my memory. I couldn't forget them. I couldn't tell my friends about them either. I was scared they would think that I was crazy. At least they only happen in public pools, I thought. I had never seen anything beneath the drain in my backyard. Until one night. During the hottest part of the summer, my friends and I went night swimming in my pool. We would turn on the underwater light, causing the waters of Lake Tilly to glow green and blue. The colors reflected off the oak trees overhead, making everything seem like an enchanted cavern. One night, Nathan B and I were passing a torpedo back and forth underwater. It was a foot-long toy torpedo made from colorful galvanized rubber. The toy was heavy and streamlined, and you could send it a long way underwater with the right push. We started passing it to each other across the pool's shallow end, but that quickly grew boring. So we swam further and further apart until we were at opposite ends of the pool. Somehow I ended up treading water in the deep end, just beneath the diving board, and above the drain. You ready? Nathan shouted from the shallow end. Even at 12, his lanky body stood halfway above the surface. Yeah, let's see you try, I shouted back. Colin slammed the torpedo into the water. I submerged, watching it go. The toy zoomed across the pool like a missile, leaving a tiny trail of bubbles in its wake. But as I suspected, Colin hadn't given it enough oomph. As it entered the deep end, its trajectory turned sharply downward. The toy careened towards the deepest point of the pool as if it were being sucked down. It finally came to a stop, right on top of the drain. Crap, I muttered as I came up for air. I stared at the drain far below. Its white latticework glowed in the pool's nightlight. There was something so unnerving about the deep, crystal clear water. You would think I'd be more frightened if it were murky, but then at least I wouldn't know how far down it went, and I wouldn't be able to see the drain. Oh, I can swim down and get it, V offered. She was near the pool's deep end. No, I said quickly. I'll get it. Nathan and V stared at me wide-eyed. Really? Yeah, I said, surprised at my answer. Looking back, it was a point of pride. This was my pool. I had spent more time in its waters than anything else. Nathan and V were my guests. It felt wrong to rely on them for something so simple. I knew that I could hold my breath long enough to swim down and back. I had swum the entire length of my pool without coming up for a single breath, and that was over twice the distance. I'm the closest to it anyway. Okay, V said in a voice that didn't sound all that convinced. I took a series of shallow breaths and then a single big one and dove beneath the surface. I beelined for the drain, using a strong and steady breaststroke. No hesitation, no time to second guess my mission. I would grab the toy torpedo and immediately ascend. The world always shrinks when you swim underwater. Time slows. You feel every heartbeat, every ounce of air leaving your lungs. As I descended, the pressure enveloped me like a thick, cold blanket. A trickle of water seeped into my goggles, slightly blurring my vision. 7 feet, 8 feet, 9, 10. I had reached the bottom of the pool. The rubber torpedo lay just below. My lungs were like balloons ready to pop. As I went to grab the toy, that's when I saw them, shining in the darkness beneath the plastic grid of the drain. A pair of cloudy, opal-colored eyes. They were large and bulbous, like a mutant frog's eyes. I screamed underwater, releasing a slew of bubbles. The eyes merely blinked in response. I shot up to the surface like a ballistic missile gasping for air. Are you alright? V had swam over to check on me. Yo, why'd you drop the torpedo? Nathan asked, swimming over. I couldn't speak. Instead, I swam to the edge of the pool and I climbed out. The night air felt cool on my wet skin. My arms were covered in goose flesh. Jason, what's wrong? V followed me out. I was about to answer her when I saw Nathan swim down to the drain. Hey! I shouted, but Nathan was already at the bottom of the pool. He grabbed the torpedo and descended to the surface before I could get another word out. Are you? I started to ask, but Nathan looked perfectly fine. He hadn't seen anything down there. Next time, just ask one of us to get it, he said. I didn't get back into the pool that night. I told my friends that I had gotten a cramp when I swam down to the drain. They seemed to believe me. There were no more night swims after that event, and when I did swim, either in my pool or a public one, I avoided the deep end entirely. For a time, I considered giving up swimming altogether, but I knew that my father would never allow it. You come up for too many breaths, my father said after one day, after I had placed third in a swim meet. If you stay underwater longer, you'll go faster. I'll just kick my legs harder, I said. It's more than that, my dad said. We need to work on your lung capacity. After that day, I spent my Saturday afternoons in the shallow end of my pool, practicing holding my breath. Dad waited nearby with a stopwatch. He wanted me to stay underwater for 2 minutes. I thought that the goal was impossible, especially when each time I went under, I could see the drain looming in the distance, taunting me. The drop-off from the shallow end to the deep end of my pool was like an underwater cliff. I started closing my eyes whenever I submerged. One afternoon, I was sitting at the bottom of the shallow end holding my breath, eyes shut when I heard this strange scraping sound. It was like someone scratching the pool's concrete floor. I opened my eyes, expecting the noise to be my father moving around, but he was nowhere to be seen. I was alone in the pool. Still, I remained underwater, listening. The noise grew louder, loud enough that I was all but certain of its origin. I crept towards the drop-off at the edge of the shallow end. The scratching had grown intense and frenzied. I stared, saucer-eyed. Far below, a pair of ghostly pale hands removed the drain from the deep end, reaching up from the abyss. 2 incredibly long and thin arms followed. They looked like chalky sticks. The arms belonged to a pale boy. He slowly crawled from the drain like a giant spider crab. His skin was so chlorine bleached that it was almost transparent. The boy had no hair and his body was extra elongated. Despite being so tall, he had a child's face, the face of an 11-year-old boy. I don't know why I kept staring, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't look away from the ghostly wraith until... beeping. My father's stopwatch was ringing. I burst to the surface. "Wow, you did it," my dad said. "You held your breath for 2 whole minutes." I didn't say anything. I just ran out of the pool screaming, Jason, where are you going?" No answer. I kept running, praying that the pale thing hadn't followed me out of the pool. I ran inside my house soaked to the bone. My mother yelled at me as I dripped water all the way to my bedroom. I didn't care. I slammed the door behind me, and then I burst into tears. I spent the next 3 days in my room refusing to go outside, let alone approach the pool. I only glanced at it through my bedroom window. The waters were calm, the drain was still intact. The pale thing hadn't followed me that day. My parents didn't see him either. They kept asking me what was wrong. For a while I couldn't answer them, wondering what they would think if I said the truth, that I was crazy. When I finally worked up the courage to speak, I told my mother that I had held my breath for too long underwater and got scared that I was going to drown. I mean, it was technically true. I was afraid of drowning, scared that the pale thing would drag me to a watery grave. My mother glared at my dad. "This is all your fault for making him hold his breath for so long." "What? He said he wanted to do it," my father explained, "to be a better and faster swimmer. He could have died." I was right there beside him, nothing was going to happen. "Well, he's clearly scared." My parents erupted into a full-blown argument. Just before it could get really heated, I shouted, "Stop!" They quieted down, looking at me with a mixture of fear and sadness. I don't know if I want to do swimming anymore," I said, my head hung low, too ashamed to meet my father's eyes. But my dad didn't protest. He didn't say anything at all, though I knew it was killing him inside. His dreams of raising an Olympic medal swimmer gone in an instant. My mother sat beside me on the bed, hugging me as she said, "Oh, it's okay, Pumpkin. You don't ever have to go in the pool again if you don't want to." I smiled. Perfect. The next day at school, I told my friends that I was quitting the Sandalwood Sharks and that there would be no more pool parties at my house either. "Why?" V asked. I told them the reason. It was the same reason I had given my parents about nearly drowning while trying to hold my breath for 2 minutes. "Dang," Nathan said. "I can't even hold my breath for 1 minute." V hit him. "What?" "Nathan, this is serious." V turned to me. "He could have drowned." "Oh, it's okay," I said. "It was my choice anyway. I wanted to hold my breath that long." "You got scared, it happens to the best of us," Nathan said. "But I bet you'll be back in the pool in no time." V smirked. "If you want to return to swimming, that is. If not, just know that we're here for you." She gave me a hug that felt like a warm blanket on a cold winter's night. I thought about telling her what really happened, but with each passing day the event sounded increasingly ludicrous. No one had seen the pale thing but me. I figured it must have been a fear-induced hallucination, but still I had sworn off swimming entirely. From that day forward, I vowed never to set foot in another pool, public or private, again. My parents took me to see a child psychologist, Dr. Kathleen Heller. I didn't tell her about the creature either, but I did tell her about vivid dreams that I kept having after the incident. Dreams where I was swimming inside a giant swimming pool, hundreds of feet deep and crystal clear. It was the size of a lake. I would float on its surface staring at this giant drain far below. I knew it was so big because I saw dozens of cars down there next to it. Pickups, SUVs, sedans, even semi-trucks. It was like somebody had thrown a whole highway's worth of vehicles into the deep end, and they were all getting pulled towards the drain, towards its infinite darkness. And Dr. Heller said the dreams were related to my anxiety about swimming. You almost drowned, she said. The dreams are a way for your brain to process that trauma. What about the cars? I asked. That doesn't have anything to do with swimming. Oh, dreams never make perfect sense, Dr. Heller explained. It's more about how you feel during them, not the specifics of what you see. Later that month, as I was dreaming of the giant pool again, something woke me in the middle of the night. I sat up in bed, drenched in cold sweat. It was 3 a.m. My room was shrouded in darkness. A sliver of moonlight illuminated a bookshelf in the far corner where I kept my action figures. These figures moved ever so slightly, as if from a minor earthquake. I slid out of bed and approached the window, staring at my backyard. The pool light was on. Immediately I knew something was wrong. My parents never left the light on at night. It wasted too much power. And then my mouth dropped even further. The drain cover was gone. No, I whispered. This is a nightmare. Wake up, please wake up. I pinched myself, but I was still standing by my window in the darkness. Tiny hairs shot up on my neck as a hazy white light filled the room. The air smelled of chlorine and fresh-cut grass, the smell of long summer afternoons. I turned around. The pale thing stood in my bedroom, his tall frame hunched forward so that he could fit beneath the 8-foot ceiling. Please don't drown me, I tried to say, but my lips wouldn't move. I just stood there wide-eyed, limbs paralyzed. It was the strangest feeling. I was terrified and amazed all at once. The pale thing had a cherubic face. His hair was bleached white as pale as his skin. His yellow eyes had a softness to them full of longing. He extended a spindly finger, moving it in a circular motion until it formed a spiral shape in the air like a cloud of mist. It was a big circle with curved arms extending from its edges. The image lasted a few seconds before dissipating. Danger, the pale thing said. Its voice sounded like smoke. I woke up moments later. Golden sunshine streamed through the blinds. It was late morning. Just a nightmare, I thought. But the smell of chlorine and fresh-cut grass still lingered in the air. After the pale thing's second visit, I decided that I needed to tell my friends the truth, if only so they would know what happened in the event of my sudden disappearance. I was terrified that the creature would return and take me with it. So one day I just blurted out the subject unprompted. Nathan V and I were lounging on the school playground during recess, bored and listless. Towering thunderclouds loomed overhead. I have to tell you something, I began. I had spent the whole afternoon thinking about what I would say, working up the courage to spill my guts. Nathan and V stared at me worried, like I was about to tell them that I had cancer or something. I'm not sure if it's real or not, but there's this tall, pale kid who lives in the drain beneath my pool. And from there I told them everything. The brief sightings while swimming above the pool drains during swim meets, the bulbous eyes that glared at me on the night I grabbed the torpedo, the encounter in my bedroom. By the time that I had finished, tears streamed down my cheeks. Nathan and V were quiet afterward. During those silent moments, a million worries crept through my mind. Chief among them was that I had just lost my two best friends. No one wants to be around the crazy kid at school. Nathan spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was the only one," he said. "Yeah, same," V added. I couldn't believe it. It was the first time that any of us had spoken aloud about our encounters. Nathan and V were just as terrified as I was about mentioning the pale thing for fear of being called insane. And then they each told their stories. "I was at the school swimming pool," Nathan said. "It was late afternoon, the sky was overcast, and I was the only one left, swimming laps back and forth. That's when I saw the glow coming from the drain." "I was on vacation down in Miami," V said, "sitting by the hotel pool late one night reading a book, when I heard this scraping sound." Like my encounter, the pale boy only spoke one word to my friends: danger. "And then he made a circle with his hand," Nathan said, "and it created this spiral thing." "Yeah, me too, it only lasted a second," V said. "And then I woke up, but I still smelled the chlorine from his body." "I thought it was only a nightmare," Nathan said. "Yeah, so did I added. "What do you think it means?" I asked, referring to the spiral symbol. "It must be water swirling down a drain," Nathan said. "Maybe it's a ghost trying to tell us he drowned in a pool, and he's stuck down there somewhere." "But which drain? He's appeared in many different pools," I said. "I'm not so sure it's that." V reached into her backpack and pulled out a composition notebook. It was full of school notes and random doodles of cats and dragons. "Here." She paused on one page in particular. I immediately recognized the large spiral pattern that she had drawn on it. "I drew this as soon as I woke up. It doesn't look like a drain to me." "Well, what is it then?" Nathan asked. "I don't know," V said. "But get this, we're not the first ones to see it. I was searching the records of our school paper when I came across this article." She removed a yellow newspaper clipping from between the pages. It was an article from 30 years earlier. "Mysterious sightings of pale pool boy." This article talked about kids seeing a tall pale boy in or around the community pool. All the sightings involved the boy making the same spiral pattern. "See?" She pointed to a child's drawing beneath the article. It looked identical to one that V had made in her notebook. "Did they ever figure out who it was?" I asked. "No. After a month, the sightings just stopped," V said. "Local officials concluded it was somebody playing a prank. This all happened 30 years ago, and then now," I said. "Why?" Over the following weeks, Nathan, V, and I racked our brains trying to solve the pale thing puzzle. V visited the local library to search for any old articles about swimming pool drownings, but nothing stood out. The closest article concerned a 6-year-old girl who had accidentally fell into a country club pool, resulting in a substantial legal settlement. Nathan casually asked other kids on the swim team if they had seen anything out of the ordinary. Given his popularity, we figured he'd be the best one at gathering more eyewitness reports. "I saw somebody sneak into the pool the other night," Nathan would tell them. "A tall, pale kid. Looked like a teenager. You know anything about that?" "No. Haven't seen anyone like that. Sorry." There were no other reported sightings outside of our friend group, but Nathan noticed several worried looks from other kids when he asked them about the pale boy, as if they knew exactly what he was talking about, but they were too afraid to confirm it. I decided to research spirals, checking out every book that I could find on the topic. I learned a lot about ancient religions and gods, but nothing about pool specters. And then a breakthrough came when I was watching the nightly news with my parents. I saw that same swirling pattern appear on our TV, and I nearly choked on my meatloaf dinner. Carol is likely to intensify into a Category 4 storm as it heads over the Gulf of Mexico. Weather officials are warning of wind gusts of up to 156 miles per hour and a potential landfall near Houston, Texas. The weatherman stood in front of the same spiral pattern that the pale thing drew in my bedroom. It was taking up most of the Gulf. It was a hurricane, but it wasn't headed towards Sandalwood, Florida. It was headed for Texas. They always swing west, my dad said. It's the air currents. Has a hurricane ever hit our town? I asked. Yeah, there was one a while back. What was that one called? Hurricane Ricky, my mother said. A Category 4. It swung back around at the last minute to hit our coast. Yeah, it's extremely rare, my dad said. And then looking at me, he added, it's nothing to worry about. My stomach dropped. I was already piecing the puzzle together in my mind, but I still had to ask. When did Hurricane Ricky hit our town? Oh geez, how long ago was that, Han? Maybe 30 years ago. I called Nathan and V immediately after dinner. It's an omen, I said. The pale thing was trying to warn us. He appears whenever a hurricane is going to strike. Oh my god, of course, V said. Hurricane Carol. But it's not supposed to hit us, Nathan said. Yeah, they said the same thing about Hurricane Ricky 30 years ago, V said. That one was supposed to hit Texas too. Yeah, and that was the last time people saw the pale thing, I added. We have to evacuate, V said. Agreed. My friends were immediately on board, but convincing our parents was another story. Nathan's dad owned a small laundromat. He was worried about losing too much business by closing early and leaving town. V's parents were both ER doctors. As essential workers, they wanted to keep helping the community for as long as they could. No one believed us when we said the storm would suddenly swing east. Not until 2 days before landfall, when the official forecast had suddenly changed. The governor ordered a complete evacuation of Sandalwood. By then, Hurricane Carol was at Category 5, fueled by apocalyptic 160-mile-per-hour winds. My parents made sure that we were packed and out of the house in under an hour. We needed to beat the traffic heading north to Atlanta, where my aunt lived. We planned to stay there during the storm. I called Nathan and V just before we left to check in on them. Please tell me that you're on your way, I said. I'll call you when we get to the hotel, V said. It was all that she could manage to say before her parents shouted at her to help with the packing. It sounded like chaos at her place. Yeah, we're about to hit the road too, Nathan told me over the phone shortly afterward. Just need to finish boarding up the windows. As the storm suddenly shifted, many residents scrambled to prepare their homes for the worst. Nathan promised me that he would call when he arrived at his cousin's place in Kansas City. Tell your parents to leave as soon as they can, I told them both. Traffic's only getting worse. Oh, don't worry, if it floods, I can just swim to higher ground. The knife can cut through any kind of water, he said confidently. I gave a slight chuckle, but I couldn't hide my worry. None of us had ever been through a storm of such magnitude. Just get out of town, I said. Thankfully, my family and I were hundreds of miles away when Hurricane Carol finally made landfall. Rain was coming down in drenching sheets up in Atlanta, and the thunder rattled the windows every few minutes. But at least we were out of the storm's direct path. While physically safe, I was an absolute wreck emotionally. My parents and I were glued to the TV that night, watching 24-hour news reports on Carol. CNN showed giant oak trees ripped from the ground like weeds, trailer homes leveled by gale force winds, and a storm surge so powerful that it floated sailboats a mile inland. The reporters were reduced to awe and terror as they described the storm in biblical terms. But worst of all, I couldn't reach Nathan or V. Their phones were down from the power outages, and neither of them had called to say that they had made it to their evacuation points. The silence grew more deafening as the days passed, with nary a word from either of my friends. The excuses that I had formulated in my head, that they were in locations without working phone lines, sounded more ridiculous as time passed. Nearly a week later, my parents and I returned to Sandalwood, and that's when the real nightmare began. There were downed trees and power lines all over town. Whole city blocks were cordoned off. I remember seeing a boat sticking out of somebody's front window, like God had thrown it there. "Oh, Jesus," my father said as we drove through the aftermath. He brought our SUV to a screeching halt next to a muggy swamp. "Where's our neighborhood?" I asked. "Dead ahead." I gasped as I saw my street sign sticking out of the murky water. The words Egret Drive barely stood above its surface. We had to use a John boat to reach our home. Tears flooded my eyes when I finally saw it. Only the roof lay above water. Our backyard had become a literal lake. You couldn't even see our swimming pool beneath its inky surface. I felt gutted. My childhood home was gone forever, but that feeling was nothing compared to the wrenching news that I received later that day, when my father got a call from Nathan's uncle. Apparently, the storm surge had flooded one of Sandalwood's primary evacuation routes. My dad said after the call, I could tell that he was fighting back tears. "What happened?" I asked, but I already knew the answer wasn't good. My father explained that hundreds of cars were trapped on the interstate due to bad traffic when a wall of water overtook them in minutes. This was during the height of the storm. Dozens of people drowned. In the days following Hurricane Carol, emergency services had recovered their bloated and pale bodies from the cars. "No," I cried out. I didn't want to hear any more, but it was too late. I already knew that Nathan and V were among them, and nothing would change that fact. I felt like a hollowed husk afterward. I don't even think that I cried at their funerals. All I could think was my reoccurring dream. All those cars trapped at the bottom of a giant swimming pool, next to the drain. It's been decades since Hurricane Carol ravaged Sandalwood, but I'm still not over the loss. Losing my best friends was like losing a couple of limbs. The phantom pain lingers. Eventually, the county added levees to manage the flooding in my hometown. They rerouted the interstate to higher ground to further inland, and they rebuilt my old neighborhood, bigger and better than ever before, adding an 18-hole golf course and renaming it Phoenix Marsh. My parents never even considered staying in the neighborhood after the disaster. They took the insurance settlement and didn't look back, selling their property to the developers and moving to a condo downtown. And they live on the top floor now, 20 stories up. I'm the only one in our family who's seen what the house has become. These days, weather forecasters are busier than ever. It seems each year there's another potential Hurricane Carol headed towards Florida or someplace else. I keep telling my parents they should move out west where I live now, but I don't think they ever will. "Oh, there are too many fires out there," my dad says. "I guess you can't hide from Earth's wrath no matter where you go." But at least one thing still brings me peace. Every Thursday morning I swim laps at my gym pool. I always pick the center lane, the one that leads directly over the drain in the deep end. As I pass above that rectangular latticework, I look down. That's where I see them. 2 flashes of pale white flesh floating in the dark. I smile at them, and they smile right back. Susan Corndecki, Ray, Nelson Asada, Dice, Creamy, Meek, Asher, Dalamagara, That One Woodsman, Sonic, GMD, Leon Knott, Takio Zarilla, Mina Lynn Getter, SWAT, Damon McCory, Mark Norman, yours truly, Dino, Lunas TV, Wayward Son, Deuce X